Disaster. Two brave Kerbals aboard the interceptor space plane successfully docked with an asteroid to divert its course away from Kerbin for scientific study. However, upon doing so, they have exhausted their fuel reserves and are now trapped, orbiting Kerbin above the altitude of the moon itself. When questioned, Kerbal High Command admitted that they have no timeline for rescuing these two brave boys in green. Meanwhile, on the home front, Kerbal R&D has developed the final super heavy tanker, capable of flying faster, further, and carrying more fuel than any of its predecessors. This should be the last Kerbal-bound tool we need in our struggle to rebuild our dwindling fuel reserves. Hello and welcome to Kerbal Fuel Crisis. I know it's been quite a while. I do apologize for the delay. There have been a lot of production setbacks and game setbacks and just all kinds of things. I will explain more of that after the fact when I take a minute to talk about the future of where this series is going. For now, let's just enjoy this very sped up footage of refueling. This is going to be a slightly shorter episode because everything is refueling. It's all refueling. All of it. Every single bit is refueling. There's like two things that I launch, and they are the largest rockets that I have yet built. Well, one of them is. The other one is a medium-sized rocket, but I haven't built very many rockets, so they're still the two largest. Now, I do apologize for that weird... there is a weird graphical issue happening. I think it has something to do with MacLeod's beautification, and it annoys the crap out of me. So if anyone actually knows how to fix that, that'd be great, because I'm going to have to take a little while and fix everything. So, taking a minute to repair a broken wheel, because a broken wheel apparently is the default state for anything that I drive around the base. We are now going up to refuel, or fuel initially, our largest craft to date. I have decided that I am tired of sending planes over to the Alpha mining base, and we're going to send one to the moon instead. Not exactly a plane, but this large rocket is going to take our first off-planet mining vehicle to the moon, or Mun, if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, I apologize, to the moon, and we're going to begin off-planet mining, which hopefully will make the series move along a little bit faster as we can start to refuel things in space. We can then ship stuff back down from orbit and not have to take these long plane flights every time we need to refuel. But this is such a huge rocket, we of course had to make 3 or 4 trips. I honestly can't remember because there was a little bit of crashing and whatnot involved, and this was a little while ago. Then, after I refueled the entire thing, after a couple more things, I realized that I forgot to put lights on. So I just recovered the vessel. I didn't revert it, I recovered it, which means it should have, all the fuel that was in it disappeared. It didn't reverse time, it just recovered. So all the fuel disappeared, and it should still be gone from all of my other mining vessels and transport things. And then I just launched it as full. So that should even out. But once again, there's been a few glitches and some gameplay bugs happening, so I'm honestly not sure exactly how much fuel I've used for anything up to this point, just because of all the times I've had to reload and do some fiddling around. And I'm really not sure what that terrible squeaking noise was outside, so I do apologize for that. Anyhow, this rocket was originally intended to go up to medium Kerbin orbit and rendezvous with the refueling station that we have there now. However, it didn't quite work out that way. I missed my launch window, and it turns out that this rocket really didn't need any more fuel than it had. I managed to get pretty much exactly the amount of fuel that I needed in order to get the thing to orbit and then into the moon, as you will see. Sorry, spoiler alert, we get to the moon with this design. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be showing it to you. But we did have to pack on quite a lot of extra engine power, which I found a little bit surprising because we're really not bringing that much fuel with us. The mining equipment weighs quite a lot, but the majority of this ship right now is actually empty. We have one completely empty structural element and one empty kethane tank, and we're not even bringing up a converter on this design, a decision that I will later regret, by the way. Our launch stage was able to get us exactly to orbit, and it got partway through the circularization. But unfortunately, it couldn't get us all... Oh, it did get us all the way through the circularization. I'm sorry, I'm remembering a different episode. Or another thing, I don't know. Anyway, we used the large stage to get all the way up to our circularization. And then we are going to use the nuclear engines. We have 4 nuclear engines on the side that are our transfer stage. that now we are transferring to the moon. We have a very short amount of fuel left in the main driving stage, or main launch stage, but it is enough to get us most of the way through our burn, but we do have to switch at the last minute to our nuclear engines. We brought along 4. I know, not the most fuel efficient, but I do like to get things done a little bit quickly sometimes. Here we can see we would have almost gotten an encounter with our brave Kerbals who are trapped aboard the Interceptor, but while I have plans to rescue them, I couldn't get enough fuel out to where we need it to go. Getting up to that wonky orbit on the Interceptor is so difficult. I'm going to establish this second mining base first, and then hopefully be able to use the fuel we get from that to launch a rescue mission. Now, we are leaving our transfer stage in orbit. It wound up with quite a bit of fuel left. It doesn't have docking ports on it, but we will be able to get something up here with Kerbal Attachment System later on. And then we'll be able to recover the fuel and hopefully use it in some of our future landings near the mining base. We did find a very rich kethane field right along the equator of the Mooner equator, which is completely ideal for what we're doing. It's also in a relatively flat area. They're near some largest craters, but not actually inside any of them. So now, after we've used our sky crane to kill our horizontal speed, we're going to work on our vertical speed, which unfortunately I killed off a little too early. I was very nervous about this design because I wasn't sure if our 4 sky crane engines had the lifting power to stop very quickly, so I overdid my slowing maneuvers just a little bit, and unfortunately wound up with very little fuel in the main stage here, which, and while not ideal, I did hope to bring the sky crane back into orbit and then be able to use it for other endeavors. When we bring down the next piece of the base that I'm going to include a fuel converter in, as well as a couple other things we forgot, I'm going to be able to refuel that from our mining and bring it back into orbit, where we can then use it to bring down some of the tankers and things that I want to have along for the ride here. But we have a successful touchdown, and I honestly had some more grandiose plans for this. I brought along a lot of ground pylons and some struts and things, and I was thinking of perhaps anchoring it to the surface somehow, but really that just doesn't seem necessary at this point. But we have extended our solar panels. We've got a couple of power plants on board. We've got solar panels to power all of those lights, which right now aren't necessary, but at night it gets super dark on the moon, so I wanted this thing to glow like the sun. Wanted to be able to see where it was no matter what time of lunar day we wound up here. Or mooner day. I don't know if we keep the M when we're referring to it that way. Anyway, we've now extended our solar panels and we're going to begin mining. And actually I realized, while I'm completely certain that it did, I forgot to check our actual fuel gauge to see if we were gaining kethane or not. So next episode we get to find out if this was a completely fruitless endeavor, apparently. Anyway, mining kethane. And then, of course, one of our Kerbals has to get out. What, Miser? We've got a Miser here, don't we? Looks like Miser. Anyway, one of our Kerbals is going to have to get out and plant a flag because we're on the moon. This is only the second craft that has been able to land on the moon. The first, of course, being the Kerbal Explorer craft that we later redesigned and is currently en route to Duna. So we can look forward to that later on, I would hope. But now, out to plant a flag on the moon. You can stop walking anytime now. There we go. I don't know why I wanted it to be so far away. I guess those ships wouldn't land on it. Anyway, we don't have to worry about science in this playthrough, because that would be utterly ridiculous. And planting a flag. Didn't get to see it. I named the flag The Spice Must Flow because I'm an old Dune fan at heart. Now, we have another mission that we must plan. I was planning to just do the moon base, but honestly that didn't take very long. I thought it might have some more interesting setbacks and things. So, we are going to send out our super heavy fuel tanker final version Mark 1, as weirdly redundant as that gets in there. Last fuel tanker I'm ever going to need to redesign because I built up so much redundancy and so much crash resistance into this thing. We send our tanker off to the mining site to refuel a couple more times because we have another rocket to launch. Now I have the mining base up and running, and we're going to need to repair another tire, it looks like. Who is this? I think it's Bill. It might be Bill. I don't think Jebediah is here. And after quickly repairing a tire, we grab a fuel line and begin transferring fuel from our newly returned plane here. And I needed to do all of this because we are launching a space truck hauler. Here it is. After quite a few crashes, reloads, lost footage, etc., some of the same problems I'm having all throughout this episode, I decided to just launch the thing. I did fill it with fuel, etc., but I couldn't. The footage was just insane, and we launched the thing. I just used MacJeb to get it up into orbit because I was feeling lazy at this point, and I also used some of MacJeb to get up to the fueling station, but not MacJeb to get into and dock with the fueling station because I want to do that myself. Anyway, we used up a lot of fuel on the way up. Being that it's just nuclear engines, it probably has enough to perhaps get to the moon, but I really wanted to refuel at the docking station here. Anyway, there's no point in bringing this to the moon yet because it is designed as a space truck. So it's going to take empty fuel tanks from Kerbin, and it's going to take them to the moon, where they will then dock with the sky crane, land next to the mining base, come back up into orbit full, at which point our space truck will then be able to come back to Kerbin and drop them off for delivery to either the refueling station, where they'll get turned into fuel, or they will just be loaded up drop pod style and sent down towards the Kerbal base itself. So, after some weirdly wonky docking maneuvers, I finally get docked, all full and simple. And that is the last thing I wanted to do in this episode. I have a couple things to talk to you about, and one thing that I want to show you later on. But for now, that's the last thing in this episode. We got our mining base working, and we got our space truck into orbit. And I did some wonky things because I accidentally still had Smart ASS on, but we'll be able to deal with that. And we transferred the last of the fuel out of that drive stage that we still had sitting up at the fueling base here. So that is now empty, and we can jettison it, and we will be able to use that fuel to now send our space truck to the moon once we have a payload up in orbit. So just a minute about the future of the series, if I may. One of the reasons that this episode was so delayed, and there goes our drive stage drifting off. Anyway, one of the reasons this episode was so delayed is I did have some busy life things and stuff that got in the way. Some of you probably saw some of my vlogs, and a couple of my vlogs and things, but really it was because the game was getting just so buggy and so bogged down with all the mods and other things happening that I can't play it for more than 5 or 6 minutes on this file without it crashing. I spend 5 times as long reloading and trying to fix some things as I do having the game not crash, which is a real problem. So I think I'm going to have to take some time, re-examine all my mods, make sure everything's working properly, and probably have to update to the newest version ideally. But we'll be able to do that later on. And I want to keep this series going. I know a lot of you like it, and we're going to continue it. It just I need to take some time to get the game working properly so that it takes me less time and less headache to make these things. And speaking of glitchy programs, it took me 4 times just to try to open KSP again to show you this. Unfortunately, I really do need to mess with my mods and hopefully upgrade, as I said. But this here is what I wanted to talk to you about. This is the new fuel drop pod, which I have sub-assembled. I need to change it because I don't know how this parachute wound up here, unfortunately. But this is the fuel drop pod. The plan would be that this goes up empty and then gets trucked over to one of our off-planet mining bases, filled up, taken back to Kerbin, and then dropped back down to land near the KSC in order to have its fuel taken to new rockets and things. Now, the thing that I would love your guys' help for is I'm having trouble thinking of a way to get enough of these into orbit at once in as much of a fuel-efficient way as possible to actually justify filling them and bringing them down. I am planning on making another variant that will use The large yellow tanks, probably. Or maybe even something bigger. Maybe even bring up an empty, like, huge jumbo tank or something. And convert the fuel before we come back, which would make it slightly more efficient. But the real problem is we have to have a launch stage that can get some of these things to orbit empty, that uses less fuel than they can bring back. And I've done a couple of experiments with it, and I've had trouble thinking of anything. So if anyone has any suggestions or any ideas or wants to, show me a video or file of a craft that they designed to do something similar to this, I would love your input. I will continue thinking of this and experimenting with these while I work on updating the game. But that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Again, thanks everyone so much for your patience in these episodes. It's been such a hard time trying to get this one out, and I know so many of you are fans, and I really appreciate all your support and feedback on previous episodes. So, more Fuel Crisis is coming. I apologize for the delay. I apologize that there's going to be more of a delay while I work out all the bugs and figure out what mods I really need to have installed and update and things. But more are coming. I'll keep you updated on that. And I really hope you enjoy the other content I've been putting out in the meantime, in between these unfortunately difficult Fuel Crisis episodes. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I am Gepwin, and I hope to see you soon.